You can't give someone confidence, and you can't control when you have confidence as a player. So, really getting our guys right now to believe in and to buy into compete over confidence, right? I've just got to buy into, I got to go live and die on every pitch and compete on every pitch. And when I start having some success, the confidence will be there a little bit.
Welcome to the Zen Game podcast, where we get inside the minds of athletes, and in this situation, a coach. Josh, thanks for being with us here at Texas State. Explain yourself, your role, and how you got here to Texas State.
Yeah, I mean, I've had an interesting journey through coaching for sure. I've had to come through the ranks a little bit, but I'm the associate head coach here. Was given that title over the summer, and my role, I run the recruiting. I work with the outfielders, throw some bad BP, hit some bad fungo, that sort of stuff. But my biggest job is to make sure we have the players and win. That's my biggest job. And then as far as how I got here, man, like I said, it was an interesting journey. Played at UTSA. Don't tell everybody. It's our big rival over here.
Well, that's how you're able to know this school's better than that school, right? Because you have the inside information. Yeah,
for sure. For sure, man. I still got all my buddies over there, alumni games and stuff, so it's kind of interesting. I always tell them, we had a good time at UTSA. We might have had a better time if we'd gone to Texas State.
Right, exactly.
Right? But yeah, man, was volunteered for a few years, went to Division III school to finally get my first paycheck, was a junior college head coach for 5 years, was trying to get out of junior college, actually took the volunteer job at Texas State at 32 years old, a newlywed, was blessed enough to, open some eyes, got my first Division I job at UTRGV, and then when Coach Trout got the head job, he brought me back. So this is my 6th year back on staff, and wife and I love San Marcos. Our families are local. The kids have grown up here, all that kind of stuff. We like the area, and obviously Texas State's a great place.
So you've seen almost every single level of college baseball at this point. So how would you compare junior college D3 to, I guess D2 is only when you skipped, to the D1 level. What is the difference? And are the players, I feel like the top end JUCO guys are just as good as the guys D1, and even D3 sometimes are about as good. So how do people end up where they are?
That's a good question. I mean, I think the guys that now are going straight to Division I baseball are the guys that physically are ready to go. I think the guys that are going junior college are the guys that maybe physically aren't there, but they got some tools. They need to go prove themselves in junior college ranks. And then, D3, the non-scholarship stuff, it's a good level of baseball. I learned a lot there. I had a good time. We had some really good players. Some guys drafted when we were there. But definitely like a little bit lower level, you know what I'm saying? So the JUCO guys, they can absolutely play here. I think the thing JUCO guys kind of come in and struggle with is it's just a big jump, right? It's a big jump in competition. And so it's kind of more of are they ready to handle the game mentally when they get here? Physically, they're probably there if we're recruiting them, but mentally, can they handle the failure? Can they handle the stress of, every junior college guy I got to hit off a guy throwing 95. It's like, that's great. But you see it 1 at bat a week. You come here, you're going to see it 10 at bat, I don't know, whatever. You're going to see it every time. So at some point, you're going to start getting out and you see it over and over again. So it's not like you psyched yourself up for my 1 at bat a week against a guy throwing 95. I get it over and over again,
And for high school kids coming out, obviously they all want to play in college, right? Like that's the goal. Sometimes it doesn't work out the way that they wanted to. What advice do you give a kid who maybe is not getting the looks that they want, and they might have to go the JUCO route or a D2 route or D3 route, and now with the portal they can transfer up? What advice would you give a kid who's maybe frustrated they're not getting those D1 offers that they're striving for?
Well, I think the way Division I baseball is going, right, with the portal, and now we're cutting down our rosters right now, you've got to make sure you go somewhere you play. You've got to play year one. So you've got to consider that as a recruit. Like, am I going to play if I go to my dream school? Because if you don't, the chances are you're not going to get brought back, right? Because now with the transfer portal, guys don't feel as guilty when they tell a guy he needs to go somewhere else, right? Because you can transfer and go to another Division I school. You can go to JUCO. So, I think guys now, you've got to kind of, each kid's got to pick their route a little bit. And now you're blessed with the ability that if you are a high-level Division I player, you don't have to go there right away because it's easier to climb the ladder a little bit and get there eventually.
Yeah, I think we talked to some football guys as well, and that was the main thing, especially for quarterbacks. I got to get on the field. Even if I go to a smaller school, I can always transfer up and that kind of stuff. So how much is that? Because again, you're in the living rooms with the parents. What is ranked, I guess, from what you've seen, what is most important to last? Is playing time always what you're asked about first? Is it role in the team? Is it NIL, which is now a thing? How do parents view it now?
To me, it's kind of like if you truly think you're a professional prospect, which is what we're trying to recruit, you got to play. because you can develop a little bit through practice and through, light game reps, that sort of stuff, but there's no replacement for getting 200 at bats. There's no replacement for throwing 25 innings on the mound your freshman year, that sort of stuff. So, I think first and foremost, it has to be playing time. You got to look at the roster and you got to say, okay, who do they have coming back? Can I realistically play? Because Division I rosters have gotten so old, if you're not playing, it's not an indictment on your ability. It's just that guy's just as talented as you are, and he's got 400 bats under his belt, so he's probably going to have more success right away. So you've got to kind of look at that stuff and figure it out. But I mean, the NIL obviously is a piece. I think that's each individual family. Like, how important is that to us? What is life-changing money to us? Is if $10,000 is going to change our life? Probably not. I probably need to go somewhere I'm going to play. If it's six figures, well, yeah, that's probably really helping a family out, helping a kid out, helping them maybe make an investment, something like that. So, I think that piece is more individualized. But, like I said, if your goal is to be a Major League Baseball player, well, you got to develop. You've got to develop at 19 years old, at 20 years old, at 21. And the best way to do that is make sure you're on the field and playing every day.
Does that sort of even the playing field out, you think, with a lot of the schools, whereas before NIL and all transport, like the bigger schools are kind of sucking all the talent they stay there. But now, like you're saying, a lot of kids just want to play right away. Has that made everything a little bit more even?
I would say absolutely. We have access to high school recruits that I would say 3 years ago we wouldn't have had access to. Because I think your Power 4 schools, your schools that are good at football, I like to call them, your name brand schools, do they want the high school kid that's really talented? No, they want the transfer from the mid-major that's already had a great year at the mid-major ranks, that sort of thing. So they're passing on those high school kids, and we've kind of looked at it as maybe this is our niche to go get those really talented 18-year-olds, get them in our program, and now they've got a chance down the road to be those great players that we've always wanted.
And so have you used that sort of on the recruiting trail as so maybe a selling point? Obviously, you want them to stay the whole time, right? But is that something that you also sort of use as a card you can pull out in front of mom and dad? Like, hey, by the way, like if this is the end goal, this is still possible if you come to us first.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely, man. I mean, we use everything on the recruiting trail, right? The ability to play every day. We break down all the freshmen that have played for us over the last 3 or 4 years and how many at-bats they've gotten. And, the one good thing that we've had here at Texas State is our guys haven't transferred. Our guys like Texas State. I think they like the coaching staff. It's a great place. We have good atmospheres at baseball games. We've had success. And we've had guys get drafted probably, most importantly, right? They know if they come to Texas State, they got a chance to win. They're going to like where they lay their head down every night. And so they're getting all those opportunities they want. And so our guys have made the decision to stick around. And we've definitely had some guys that could have jumped in the portal and could be somewhere right now, probably making significantly more money than they are making here. But they've decided to stay, I think for the right reasons.
And I'll give you the chance to make the recruiting pitch now. Like you said, the right reasons. What do you think is the biggest driver? Because there's probably some kids who come in thinking, oh, I'll be here for a couple of years and leave, but then they end up being here for 4 and loving it, right? Like, What do you think is the biggest factor that keeps the kids here?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, Trout does a great job. I think our guys love Coach Trout. He's a player's coach. He's very honest with them, but in a caring way where he tells them exactly what you need to do. Like, hey, you want to get on the field? This has got to get better. And so you leave that meeting as a kid and you go, or as a player, and you go, well, if I don't get these things better, like Trout's already told me what I have to do to play. So then if you're not playing, you didn't get better in those things, And I think the honesty with that stuff goes a long way. And then, like I said, I think kids like San Marcos, they like Texas State. They enjoy that we have a great fan base. The Sun Belt's a really good league in baseball. It's been the top 5 league in the country for the last 3 years. We put 4 or 5 teams at a regional every year. So they're already playing at that high level. So I think it just gives them the comfort of knowing I'm in the right place, right? There's some comfortability here. Guys have gotten drafted. There's big leaguers that came from Texas State. Like, the grass isn't always greener, And there's also some situations, past situations that not just at our place, but other schools in our conference that we point to with kids like, hey, this guy went to name your favorite SEC school. He's not playing.
Rotten on the
or
bench.
He went in there and didn't have a great year, and he went from a top 10 rounder to not getting drafted now, So you always think you're going to go there and this is going to happen that way, but you never know, right? When you've proven yourself at a level, you're comfortable with the coaching staff, you know what the work looks like, you know what the day looks like, and you're having success, part of it's why would you leave?
Right. And we'll flip it now, put it from your perspective, because I think baseball recruiting is like the most fascinating thing, because it is, in my opinion, by far the most difficult, because you're balancing split scholarships, NIL, you've got the draft that happens sort of during the playoffs, so you don't really know who's coming back. You have all these factors. How do you manage all this? Because you got to make sure you still have a full roster and all this stuff, but it just feels like so many moving pieces.
It's very chaotic. It's very like right now we're kind of in like a holding pattern where we're focused on the season.
Right.
As soon as the season ends, it's like, oh my God, we got to look at this roster. We got to figure this out. Guys are going off to summer ball. Maybe they didn't get a ton of at-bats at our place. Now they got to go out in summer ball and kind of prove themselves a little bit. Who's going to get drafted? Who do we think is going to get drafted that's now going to come back? And it's, I don't want to say it's a nightmare. It's not a nightmare, but it's a lot, right? And what moving the draft back did to us, the transfer portal, is it just moved so many decisions to the middle to late into the summer, and you're kind of, you're juggling all that, and you got to get to 34 guys, and it's like, well, we've got 37 right now. Who's going to get drafted? Which high school might need to go to junior college, that sort of thing, and it's a lot. It really is.
Well, I'll go give you. We'll back up a little bit. We talked about the selling pitch for here. What is your favorite story of a kid that maybe diamond in the rough situation that you found and no one else found, and then you brought him here, and then all of a sudden the success happens? Do you have the one that sticks out in your mind? It's a guy
I've already interviewed. It's Ryan Farber.
Okay.
I was looking for a shortstop in the 23 class, and called some contacts, and he's like, hey, there's this little guy down in San Antonio, plays with his hair on fire, gets a hit every time I'm there, really plays defense. I just think he's a ball player. And so I went to see him, and it was okay. Like he said, he was okay. He was okay. He actually made a play, and it's funny. I think he told that story on your podcast. But there was like a ball that came to him, and it was like the worst hop you ever see. It's a bad baseball field. And he barehanded it, double play, and then the fist pump coming off the field. And I kind of fell in love with that moment. At the time, I don't think Ryan had any offers. He was under-recruited. He was a little undersized at the time. They came in here like 155 pounds. And I even told Coach Trout, I was like, hey, he's a ball player. He'll really play defense. At some point in his career, I think he'll hit enough. He's probably a 9-hole guy. And then he comes in and probably would have been a freshman All-American last year if he doesn't get hurt, really went off offensively and stuff. So that would really be my diamond in the rough story for sure.
And then when you're on the recruiting trail, there's always these and again, this is more for the high school kids that are about to watch this. There's always those intangibles that you see that maybe they don't know you're watching. What are some of the things that you look at that may not just be just straight baseball? You mentioned the fist pump. What are those little things that you kind of keep an eye on to make sure this is the right type of kid, that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I think the thing that's more difficult now than it's ever been is because, everybody's in training mode, right? And so it's gotten us some elite abilities out of players, but who's actually a baseball player, right? And that's an all-encompassing term, but who runs the bases well? Do they do the little things right? Do they move around between innings the right way? Do they make mistakes on the bases? Do they kind of instinctively move around the field based on how a guy's swinging in the box when they're on defense? Those are the little things that make the difference in the pinch that if you just go watch a game or look at a stat sheet, you don't ever see. You see the big guy and he hits home runs and he looks like Tarzan. Does he play like Jane, right?
Right.
And if you just see him on the right day, you may not know. And so you've got to go back and really watch. And then at some point, put the radar gun down or put the stopwatch down and just lock in on the guy for 7 innings, and how does he move around the field? Does he play the game you want him to play? And then you talk about intangibles. And at some point, this thing all comes down to toughness. Baseball's a negative game. It's a tough game. Tough guys thrive. And that's probably the hardest one to measure before you really get to know a kid. You got to talk to his high school coach. You got to talk to his travel coach. You probably got to meet his parents. How does he interact with his parents? How do they treat him? And then at some point, you really kind of want to see a guy fail. When he fails, how is he? If he goes 0 for 2 his first 2 at bats or his third and fourth at bats really bad, or does he kind of get upset about it a little bit and really lock into his third and fourth at bats? Because that's what it's going to be at our level, right? It's hard.
Right.
And you may go out there and start off a bad day. Well, you've got to come out there and be productive in your third at bat when the whole game's gone against you so far. And that really comes down to toughness.
You talk about having to talk to parents, high school coach, AAU coach, all this kind of stuff. I've done a few of these where I asked this question: who's the weirdest person you've asked for a character evaluation? I've heard security guard. I've heard janitor. Who's the weirdest, weird one-off person you've had to ask for a character evaluation of a recruit?
I don't know if I'm coming up with one of those.
Nothing too crazy.
Although I have. I knew a girlfriend's dad. I knew a player's girlfriend's dad one time. Hey man, how does he treat your daughter? That's probably a pretty good one, right?
Yeah.
If the girlfriend's dad likes him, he's probably a good dude.
Right.
So
maybe that's the key right there.
Yeah, maybe I need to do that more often. He's a good player too.
And then too, for the high school kids, top 3 things to make yourself recruitable from your perspective when you're looking at the sheet, whether it's grades and all that kind of stuff. What can a kid do to make themselves presentable to a college coach?
Yeah, I mean, the low-hanging fruit is play hard.
Yeah.
Right, that's pretty obvious. You can play hard. You can see a kid that plays with intensity. You know, I think you've got to show when you're being recruited that you love baseball. Right? You kind of watch a guy, it's like, he's here because it's cool. Or does he actually get out there and love the game of baseball a little bit? You know, does he play hard? Does he love baseball? You know, and then you're trying to be recruitable. I mean, the game is moving to a point where teams are so physical. You go look at Major League Baseball, it's extremely physical. So I think anything you can do in the weight room, you can't control how tall you are, but you can control how fit you are. You can control how strong you are to a certain extent. So I think, that's where guys have really got to get in and start getting after it when they're 15, 16 years old, of really building their body so they can do things. Because you can be really talented, but if physically you can't come into our level and handle yourself for 56 games against that kind of competition, it's probably not going to matter how talented you are.
And then the other part of it too, now with all the technology and everything, I hear a lot of stories too of like, oh, but these are my StatCast numbers, these are my TrackMan numbers.
Sure.
Like, how much does that factor in, or is it just sort of like a baseline? Like, okay, like it needs to be like these level of numbers, and then we'll look at everything else, or is it sort of the opposite where we like the player, now let's look at the numbers?
I would say offensively we don't look at it a lot.
Okay.
Now on the pitching side, I think metrics can tell you the story of who a guy could be, but I think more importantly, so you look at obviously velocity and induced vertical break and release height and extension and all these things. And they tell you a story of what a guy's capable of. But at the same time, like, success is more important than potential. You know what I'm saying? Like, is the guy good? Does he go out and win games? Because if he got a big fastball and the metrics check out, but he goes 3 1/3 for his high school team and gives up 3 runs every time, who cares?
Right.
He probably needs to go JUCO and develop. He's got the ability to do it, but right now he's not there,
And that's the other part of it too. Like, are there some kids that you tell them just straight up, like, you will be good enough, but you need to go somewhere where you can play and then come back to us? Does that conversation ever happen?
Absolutely. There's definitely some junior colleges that we kind of, I don't want to say we make handoffs to, but we'll recommend guys to, because we get players from them like, hey, we like this guy. I don't think he's quite ready for us. I don't think he's quite ready to step in and have a big role for the Bobcats right now, but I think he's a good one for you. And I think if you get him and get him better, he's going to have a lot of opportunities one day.
And if you had to go back to recruit yourself, let's put you back in high school.
I wouldn't.
Why or why not? What advice would you have given yourself if you were 18?
Play football. I mean, my whole family's football coaches, football players, right? My dad, big-time football coach, long-time defensive coordinator. I honestly played baseball until the summer before my senior year just because I liked it. It was like my gap between basketball season and football season. Yeah. And I remember I had a really good coach. I was blessed when I was 16 years old, and I was playing for him. He was really hard on me, great coach. And he was the first one, and we're walking out at the game. He was like, hey, you can play Division I baseball. And I remember, like, we were walking, and I was like, yeah, really? Like, I hadn't even thought about that, But if I go back to me, like, from a baseball perspective, probably under-talented. Now I was able to take a football mentality. I'd like to say I was very tough into the baseball field. So I had a lot of success in college. Man, guys like me don't make it at this level. And they don't. Well, it's not that they don't make it; they don't get an opportunity.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, I was the pitchability righty. Those guys don't exist, anymore. And so, if I had to go back and recruit myself, I don't know. I'd tell myself, hey, you probably need to go D2, bro. Like, go JUCO and probably D2.
Well, you mentioned the 3-sport, and that's something that, I mean, we're roughly the same age. That was normal back then, and now it's rare. Like, do you guys, when you see someone who plays football, but they also play baseball too, like, does that poke up the eyeballs, or does you guys not really factor that in? Like, how does that
Absolutely,
play?
It's very attractive.
Yeah.
One, I think if you're a football kid, I instinctively think you're a little tougher. Yeah. Football guys, when things go against them, they just run a little harder, hit a little harder, run a little faster. They kind of dig deep, get upset. And I would always choose a guy that reacts to failure that way or reacts to something hard that way versus
shut down,
going into a shell. Yeah.
Yeah.
The guy ran track. He's probably got good running form. He's probably done some hard things in his life. Basketball, he's probably in shape. He's run horses, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, I think all that matters. I do think there's a point where if you're going to be a big-time baseball player, you probably got to start focusing 10 to 12 months a year on baseball. But, I don't necessarily think it's in high school, because we've taken players from smaller schools that play 3 and 4 sports, and they've come in here and really thrived.
And what would you say is the best sport crossover? You say it's football, or what have you seen the most success with 2-sport athletes?
Football.
Football,
baseball, for sure.
And
especially being in Texas.
Oh, well, yeah. Everyone's got to play football in Texas, right? I'll ask you a more specific question. Then, what is it? Always the quarterback who ends up being the good, or is it not necessarily always the guy with the arm?
The quarterbacks seem to play baseball the most, right? Like, they have some arm talent, so they play baseball. Not always. I've always said your offense needs to look like you got 3 or 4 wide receivers, you got a couple tight ends, and you got a couple guys that are like, the little scat back type guys, right? They probably play in the middle of the field. They're really quick, that sort of stuff. So. Not always quarterbacks. I'd like to have a defensive end every once in a while. A guy at 6'3", 230. That'd be pretty cool too. So, but the quarterbacks, there's a reason they play quarterback in high school, right? They're probably the best athlete. They probably have the best leadership skills. They probably have the most composure. So those guys are a lot of times easy to plug and play. And we do have about 7 quarterbacks on our team right now. High school quarterbacks. And I'm recruiting 2 more.
Okay. Well, does that mean that the inner squad of flag football games get a little competitive? What's the most competitive baseball team building activity we got going on?
Our guys play basketball. We don't like it. We try not to see it. We kind of tell them not to, and it goes in one ear and out the other. But you don't know. Last year we had a big 5-on-5 pitchers versus hitters basketball game that there was a lot of talk going on for a while. But the pitchers who were all like 6'6", of course, won. So
there's also a lot of conversation in baseball teams. Are pitchers athletes? Can you vouch for the pitchers a little bit? Are they better athletes than?
Well, the good ones are athletes.
The good ones are.
At some point the whole thing is about athleticism, right? You throw a baseball hard, that's great, but if you're not athletic, you probably can't repeat your delivery,
right?
And so that sort of thing. So yeah, the good pitchers are definitely athletes.
And then just outlook for this season, obviously we're sort of in the beginning stages. What have you liked so far? What do you think the team's going to improve upon by the time we get to postseason? That kind of stuff. How's it sort of shaping out so far?
Yeah, it's it hasn't started as well as we'd like it to. That's for sure. If I'm going to be real honest about it. We have 2 guys that have had a full Division I season under their belt, and we got a lot of guys that are kind of learning to deal with failure a little bit. And we've got to grow up a little bit. We got to mature, and that's our job to get them there. And we got to get going. We got to be honest about it. So 8-7, it sounds okay. I don't know that we're playing extremely well right now, and we got to get them going. We got to get better. We got to get on the practice field and push them. And we got to give them a plan. We got to get them to believe in the plan, and we got to keep moving forward. Because from a talent standpoint, I think we got a really good team. So how do we get them from where we are to being a really good team? And so that's the mental hurdles, and some of it's physical, but a lot of it's the mental hurdles. And the thing that's so hard in baseball, like I said earlier, it's a negative game. A lot of things go against you in baseball. You got to be tough between the ears. Is you can't give someone confidence, and you can't control when you have confidence as a player. So, really getting our guys right now to believe in and to buy into compete over confidence, right? I've just got to buy into, I got to go live and die on every pitch and compete on every pitch. And when I start having some success, the confidence will be there a little bit. But when I don't have the confidence, I got to just buy in and compete,
And then the last question I'm going to ask you, I'm going to let you advocate for the state of Texas, I guess. If I had to put together 4 all-star teams, of colleges, Texas colleges, Florida colleges, California colleges, and then the rest. And we're going to play a tournament. How does that shape out, you think?
Well, the one thing you're getting in Texas, you're going to get big arms and big bats. It's kind of, and I think a lot of that does come from the football culture a little bit. You go West Coast, they're good, but they play their own brand of baseball. Texas is like the big guys that flex at you and throw hard and try to hit home runs, that sort of thing. So Texas baseball is great. There's a reason the entire country recruits Houston and Dallas. You go to a big event in Texas, the entire SEC will be there, the entire former Pac-12 will be there. Now I guess they're Big 12,
10 or whatever.
Big 10, wherever they are. The entire country is in Dallas, Texas, watching an event. The same thing in Houston, the same thing at the area code games. So Texas is uber talented, especially like I said with arms and big bats, that sort of thing. So I don't know how it stacks up. I don't watch Florida. Florida's obviously really good too. California, probably just a personal thing, but. I think Texas do really well.
Well, thank you so much, Coach. Really appreciate having you on.
Appreciate it, guys. Yep.